there is something many people don't dare to admit out loud. They miss someone who hurt them. And when they realize that, the first thing that appears is guilt. How can I miss someone who hurt me so much? What's wrong with me? Am I being weak? But here is something important you need to understand from the very beginning. You are not missing the harm. You are missing the bond. And that difference changes everything. When a relationship ends, especially if it ended with pain, betrayal, or disappointment, the mind tries to organize what happened in simple terms: good or bad, safe or dangerous, right or wrong. But human bonds do not function in such clean categories. You can recognize that someone hurt you deeply and still feel their absence. That does not mean you forgot the damage. It means the bond was real. The human brain does not attach only to behaviors. It attaches to shared experiences, to moments of connection, to feelings of closeness. Maybe that person was the one who made you feel heard. Maybe they were the one who held you when you were vulnerable. Maybe they were present during an important moment in your life. Those memories do not disappear just because pain came afterward. When you say, "I miss them," many times you are not saying, "I miss what they did to me." You are saying, "I miss how I felt when everything seemed okay." And that nostalgia can be deeply confusing, because the same brain that remembers the harm also remembers the intimacy, the shared laughter, the feeling of being chosen or understood. The problem is that after a painful breakup, the mind tends to mix everything into the same package. You miss the person, and that seems to invalidate your pain. You remember the good moments, and that seems to justify what happened. But it is not like that. The emotional bond functions like an invisible network that is built over time. Every deep conversation, every gesture of affection, every moment of support strengthens that network. When the relationship ends, that network does not disappear immediately. It breaks abruptly, and the brain feels that rupture as loss. Missing someone is not a betrayal of yourself. It is a natural reaction to the loss of connection. Imagine you had a favorite place you went to when you needed peace, a place you associated with calm, safety, belonging. If one day that place no longer existed, you would not miss the walls or the physical structure. You would miss how you felt there. Something similar happens with relationships. Many times you do not miss the person as a whole. You miss the feeling you experienced when the relationship was working. The mind also tends to seek coherence. When someone hurts you but previously gave you affection, an internal contradiction is created. That contradiction can make you cling to the good part, trying to keep alive the safer version of the bond. Not because you are naive, but because your emotional system seeks stability. And this is where many people judge themselves unfairly. They tell themselves they should feel only angry, only disappointed, only firm in their decision to walk away. But the heart does not function through rational decrees. Grief is not linear. You can feel relief and nostalgia on the same day. You can be convinced that it was for the best and still miss their voice at night. That does not invalidate your growth. It does not cancel the damage that occurred. It simply shows that the bond left a mark. Furthermore, attachment does not immediately distinguish between what was healthy and what was harmful. Attachment registers proximity, intimacy, and repetition. And when those dynamics disappear, the body feels emotional withdrawal. Yes, withdrawal. Because during the relationship, habits were created. Daily messages, calls, physical contact, shared rituals. The brain became accustomed to that pattern. When the pattern breaks, emptiness appears. And emptiness is not always interpreted as freedom. Sometimes it feels like lack. That is why it is essential to understand something fundamental. Missing someone does not mean you want to go back. Missing someone does not mean the relationship was right. Missing someone does not mean the harm was not real. It means there was a meaningful bond. And bonds, when they break, leave an echo. Recognizing this allows you to stop fighting yourself. You can say, "Yes, I miss them," and at the same time, "I know it wasn't good for me." Both things can coexist. You are not crazy for feeling that contradiction. You are going through a loss. And every loss, even when it was necessary, has a process. The first step to understanding why you miss someone who hurt you is not to judge yourself. It is to understand that what you long for is not the pain. It is the connection that once made you feel safe, and that, even if it hurts to admit, is deeply human. If in the first chapter we understood that you do not miss the harm, but the bond, now it is time to go deeper into something even more important. Attachment does not automatically switch off when someone hurts you. Many people believe that if a relationship was harmful, love should disappear at the exact moment pain appears, as if the brain could say, "This hurt me, I delete it." But the attachment system does not work that way. Attachment is a biological mechanism. It is designed to maintain closeness with significant figures, even when the relationship becomes complicated. For thousands of years, survival depended on not losing the bond with the group or with a partner. Separation could mean danger. That is why, when you bond deeply with someone, your brain begins to associate that person with safety, emotional regulation, and reward. Yes, reward. Every message you received, every hug, every moment of connection, activated dopamine and oxytocin systems. In other words, the chemistry of pleasure and bonding. Your body learned that this person was a source of emotional relief. And when that source disappears, you do not just lose someone. Your nervous system loses a familiar way of regulation. This is where something very uncomfortable appears. The body may seek refuge, even in the person who hurt it. This creates a lot of confusion. How can I want to call someone who hurt me? Why do I want to text them if I know I shouldn't? The answer is simple and complex at the same time. Your attachment system is still active. Pain does not automatically deactivate the bond. Sometimes it even intensifies it. In relationships where there were emotional highs and lows, moments of intense affection followed by distance or conflict, something called intermittent reinforcement is created. It is one of the most powerful patterns in behavioral psychology. When a reward is not constant but unpredictable, the brain becomes more dependent. It does not know when the next good moment will come, and that increases the urge to seek it. It is the same principle that makes slot machines addictive. If your relationship was intense, unstable, or unpredictable, your brain may have become attached not only to the person, but to the dynamic itself. That is why, even after the harm, you feel the impulse to return. Not necessarily because the relationship was healthy, but because the attachment and reward system became conditioned. In addition, attachment does not immediately distinguish between real safety and familiarity. And what is familiar, even if it hurts, can feel safer than the unknown. Separating means facing a void, new routines, an identity without that person, and that activates uncertainty. The brain prefers what is known, even if it was imperfect, over what is uncertain. That is why missing someone is not a sign of emotional weakness. It is a sign that your system is still readjusting. Attachment needs time to reorganize. And that time is not only emotional, it is neurological. Your body has to learn to self-regulate without that figure, to calm itself without their voice, to sleep without their presence, to feel sufficient without their validation. That does not happen overnight. Many people try to force themselves to get over it quickly. They tell themselves they should not think about that person, that they should be strong, that it was already enough. But strength is not in repressing attachment. It is in understanding it. When you understand that your body is going through a process of readjustment, you can stop interpreting it as a betrayal of yourself. You are not wanting to go back because the harm did not matter. You are going through the natural process of detachment. And detaching from someone significant is one of the most complex processes a human being can experience. It is not just about stopping talking. It is about stopping waiting. It is about stopping projecting a future. It is about stopping imagining that they will come back. That requires time. The key here is this: missing someone does not mean the relationship was right. It means the attachment was deep. And a deep attachment does not dissolve through logic. It transforms through awareness, patience, and new experiences of safety. The next step is to understand something even more revealing. Sometimes you do not only miss the person, you miss who you were when you were with them. And that completely changes the perspective. There is something that often goes unnoticed when you miss someone who hurt you. You are not only missing the person, you are missing who you were when you were with them. And this completely changes the perspective. Relationships do not only create a bond with the other person, they also shape our identity. Within a relationship, we build a specific version of ourselves, the person in love, the chosen one, the person who had a shared project. Maybe with that person you felt happier, maybe more desired, maybe more secure. Maybe you felt that your life had a clear direction. When the relationship ends, not only does the other person disappear, that version of you disappears as well. And that creates a deep grief. Because you are not only losing someone external, you are losing an internal narrative. In psychology, we talk about relational identity. It is the part of your identity that is built within a specific bond. You are not exactly the same person with your partner as you are with your friends or your family. Each relationship activates different parts of you. When that relationship breaks, those parts are left suspended. That is why, after a painful breakup, many people say, "I'm not the same. I feel like something changed in me. I don't recognize myself." It is not only sadness, it is disorientation. Missing someone can actually be missing the illusion you shared, the future you imagined, the conversations about plans that no longer exist. The brain does not only attach to the present, it attaches to the projected future. When you build expectations with someone, trips, living together, stability, shared growth, your mind begins to integrate those images as part of your future reality. When all of that breaks, you do not only lose what was, you lose what could have been. And that, what could have been, hurts deeply. In addition, within a relationship, you often receive constant validation. Feeling chosen, important, or prioritized reinforces your self-esteem. When that disappears, you do not only lose the person, you lose a source of external confirmation. It is natural, then, to feel emptiness. But here it is important to make a powerful distinction. If what you miss is how you felt about yourself when you were with that person, that means that version of you exists within you. It does not belong exclusively to the relationship. The relationship activated certain qualities in you, but it did not create them from nothing. The illusion, the capacity to love, the hope, the devotion, those are yours. What happens is that, when the bond breaks, those qualities become associated with the memory of the other person. And then it seems that, to feel them again, you would need to recover that person. But that is not true. Missing the version of yourself that you were does not mean that version disappeared forever. It means you need to rebuild your identity without depending on that specific bond. This process can be uncomfortable because it involves redefining yourself, asking again who you are without that story. But it is also an opportunity. The opportunity to integrate what you learned, to keep what was authentic in you and let go of what depended on the other person. Missing someone is not always love. Sometimes it is grief for an identity that transformed, and understanding that reduces the guilt. You are not longing for the harm. You are not denying what happened. You are going through the loss of a part of your story. And every story that had meaning leaves an echo. In the next chapter, we are going to understand something that intensifies this process even more. Why the brain tends to remember the good more strongly than the bad. And that can make nostalgia feel stronger than reason. When you miss someone who hurt you, something often happens that confuses you even more. Suddenly, your mind seems to focus almost exclusively on the positive memories. You remember the laughter, the intimate moments, the kind words, the promises, and what made you suffer becomes blurred, as if it loses intensity. Then you ask yourself, what if it wasn't that bad? What if I'm exaggerating? What if I ruined something that was actually worth it? But here is something fundamental you need to understand. Emotional memory is not objective. It is selective. The human brain is designed to reduce suffering once the immediate threat has passed. Once the relationship has ended and the direct confrontation disappears, the nervous system no longer needs to remain in a constant state of alert. And when the intensity of the conflict decreases, painful memories lose part of their emotional charge. In contrast, pleasant memories can become more accessible. This is not self-deception. It is a protection mechanism. The brain tries to balance the experience so that you do not remain trapped in a permanent state of pain. But there is something even more powerful. Intermittent reinforcement. If your relationship had ups and downs, moments of intense affection followed by distance, conflict, or coldness, a very strong psychological pattern was created. Intermittent reinforcement occurs when the reward is not constant, but unpredictable. Sometimes you received intense love, sometimes indifference, sometimes promises, sometimes disappointment. This type of dynamic generates greater emotional dependency than a stable relationship. Why? Because the brain becomes hooked on the possibility of the good moment. It never knows when it will arrive, and that uncertainty increases the seeking behavior. It is the same principle that keeps someone in front of a slot machine. They do not know when the reward will come, but the anticipation keeps them trying. In emotional relationships, that reward can be a loving message after days of silence, an intense reconciliation after an argument, a promise that seems to repair everything. When the relationship ends, your mind does not only lose the person, it loses the expectation of that next good moment. And that is when selective nostalgia appears. The brain remembers rewards more clearly than punishments, especially when those rewards were intense. That is why you can vividly remember a special night, but struggle to mentally hold on to the times you felt ignored or hurt. Not because the pain did not exist, but because the emotional system prioritizes what created connection. In addition, when there is distance, the mind tends to idealize. Without the constant presence of conflict, memories are re-edited, they soften, they reorganize. It is as if the brain applies a filter that tones down the negative and highlights what was meaningful. This process can make you doubt your own experience. But here it is important to hold on to a clear truth. Remembering the good does not invalidate the bad. A relationship can have had authentic moments and, at the same time, have been harmful. Not everything was a lie. But not everything was healthy. The mind does not function in absolute extremes. It can preserve positive memories. Without that meaning, you should return. Missing the good moments does not mean the harm disappeared. It means there were real parts that had value for you. The challenge is not to allow selective nostalgia to erase the reasons why you walked away. Because the brain may remember the smile, but your body remembers how the anxiety felt. It may remember the kind words. But there were also nights of uncertainty. When nostalgia appears, you do not need to fight it. You just need to contextualize it. Yes, there were beautiful moments. Yes, there was real connection. And yes, there was also pain that you should not minimize. Emotional maturity does not consist of denying the good. It consists of integrating both without idealizing. And when you manage to integrate, nostalgia loses strength. It is no longer a blind temptation. It becomes a conscious memory. In the next and final chapter, we will address something decisive. Missing someone does not mean you should go back. Because feeling something does not always indicate that it is the best decision. And learning to differentiate emotion from choice can completely transform your healing process. After understanding the bond, attachment, identity, and selective memory, we arrive at an essential point. Missing someone does not mean you should go back. This is one of the most common and most dangerous confusions in breakup processes. Feeling nostalgia can seem like a sign, a kind of internal message that says, maybe you made a mistake, or perhaps you should try again. But emotions are not always instructions. Sometimes they are processes, phases of denial, idealization, sadness. Phases of denial, idealization, sadness, and a desire for reconnection. That does not mean the relationship was healthy. It means it was significant. It is important to learn how to differentiate between emotion and decision. You can feel the urge to text them and decide not to. You can feel the desire to go back and choose to protect your stability. Emotional maturity is not about not feeling. It is about not acting impulsively on everything you feel. Furthermore, returning to a relationship does not automatically eliminate the pattern that made it harmful. If the conflicts were not understood and transformed, it is very likely they will reappear. Nostalgia can make you minimize what happened, but the deeper dynamic does not change simply because time has passed. Missing someone can be part of the emotional detox process. During the relationship, habits, routines, and expectations were formed. The brain became accustomed to that presence. When it disappears, emptiness appears. And emptiness can be confused with love. But emptiness is not necessarily compatibility. Sometimes what hurts is not the person, but the absence of what they represented. The key here is to ask yourself something different. Instead of asking, "Do I miss them?" ask yourself, "Was it healthy for me? Did I feel safe? Could I be myself without fear? Was there consistent respect?" Love without stability is not enough. Connection without safety is exhausting. And desire without boundaries can take you back to the same place of pain. This does not mean you need to harden yourself or close your heart. It means you need to integrate what you learned. You can recognize that there were good moments. You can accept that the bond was real. You can allow yourself to feel nostalgia and still decide to move forward. Missing someone is not betraying yourself. Going back to a harmful dynamic can be. Emotional growth means holding the contradiction without surrendering to impulsivity. It is accepting that one part of you still feels, while another part has already understood. And over time, the part that understood becomes stronger. Nostalgia decreases when your life begins to fill with new experiences, new connections, and new forms of safety. You do not need to erase the past. You need to stop living in it. Missing someone who hurt you does not mean you are weak. It means you are human. But choosing what is healthy for you, even when it hurts, is an act of strength. You can honor what was, without returning to what broke you. And that marks the beginning of true healing. If you liked this story, if at any moment you felt it resonated with you or touched something in your heart, I would love to read you in the comments. Tell me if you learned something today, or which part of this story feels similar to your own life. And if you want to keep receiving these small reminders that can accompany and support you in your daily life, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being here, for taking this moment of calm. See you in the next video.